I'd signed all 3 documents without hesitation, pen gliding across fine print before Hale could even finish his bitter jab from the study doorway. Typical Chloe. All you care about is material gain. I lifted my gaze from the last signature page, calm and unflinching. Same to you, Hale. Your mother threatened to cut your trust fund entirely if you refused this show stunt to salvage Lila May's public image. Didn't we both land ourselves in the same transaction here? I didn't verbalize the rest of my thought back then. How Hale had gotten blackmailed into playing the doting romantic lead for his childhood crush, while I was forced to play the invisible, jealous side character for millions of live stream viewers. I'd agreed to the deal purely for the house. No sentimental attachment tying me to Hale whatsoever. Our marriage had been hollow from day one, rooted in a drunken night on our wedding anniversary when he'd stumbled into our entryway, pulled me into a messy kiss, and mumbled Lila's name against my jaw mid-makeup. I'd slapped him hard enough to leave a bruise on his cheek the second I processed the name falling off his tongue. After that, we split the penthouses, 2 master suites, and operated as total strangers under one roof for 12 straight months. Live filming rolled into its first dinner segment before I could spiral too far down old memories. Cameras circled the long oak dining table, 3 crew members with boom mics hovering inches from our shoulders, every word streamed live to hundreds of thousands of viewers. Hale stepped directly between me and Lila May, carrying a white ceramic bowl piled high with hand-peeled lobster meat, and set it down solely in front of her plate. Lila's cheeks flushed pink, head tilted down in that practice-soft, bashful routine she perfected for on-camera charm. You're too sweet, Hale. I don't deserve this much trouble from you. I shifted my chair 1 full foot to the left, clearing a wide-open path between them without a single word of protest. The movement was automatic, rehearsed mentally 100 times since signing the conduct agreement, and I intended to uphold every clause to collect my mansion payout without dispute. The live chat bar exploded with toxic text the second I moved aside, scrolling so fast the text blurred across the monitor propped up behind the production crew. Chloe's such a clout-chasing creep, always inserting herself between Hale and Lila. Why'd casting even pick this bitter gold digger for the cast? Total buzzkill. Lila and Hale are endgame. This rich girl needs to go home and leave them alone. I glanced at the chat feed out of the corner of my eye, no anger bubbling up inside me at all. It was just scripted reality garbage, and I had zero emotional investment in what anonymous strangers online thought of my character on the show. The host leaned forward into frame, grinning for the cameras as he gestured at the lobster bowl. Hale, peeling lobster one by one takes ages. You must do this for Lila all the time off camera, right? Hale's eyes never drifted toward me once as he replied, tone warm and soft for the viewing audience's benefit. She's always loved lobster, so it's never a hassle. Lila giggled, swatting lightly at his forearm like a teen girl crushing on her high school sweetheart. I reached for a stack of linen napkins from the center table, plucked 2 off the top, and set one neatly beside Lila's wine glass, maintaining a blank, pleasant smile for every rolling camera lens. The chat erupted even more viciously this time. She's copying Lila's whole nice girl shtick to steal Hale's attention. Embarrassing. Can the production team boot Chloe already? Her forceful lightness is cringe central. A minor plot twist seed, 380-word early cliffhanger beat for YouTube retention. I caught Hale's eyes flick to my wrist for half a second when I handed Lila the napkin. There was a faint flicker of something unreadable in his expression, confusion, maybe even a tiny twinge of guilt, before he snapped back to his performative soft gaze locked on Lila. I filed that micro-reaction away in my head, making a mental note to unpack whatever hidden emotion he was masking later. Up until that moment, I'd fully believed Hale felt zero remorse about using me as a prop on national television for his first love's sake, but that split-second glance cracked my initial assumption wide open. The entire meal dragged on for nearly 2 hours, every small action I took twisted by the live crew's framing to paint me as a clingy, obsessive rival. Hale poured sparkling water for Lila. I rotated the Lazy Susan to slide her favorite side dishes closer. He told silly, nostalgic childhood anecdotes to make her laugh. I smiled along politely for camera coverage, acting as a background extra in my own legal husband's romantic fantasy storyline. I functioned like a paid background NPC, hitting every required beat per Eleanor's contract with 0 deviation. After dinner wrapped, the cast moved into the villa's lounge area for the classic truth or dare segment, cameras still rolling nonstop with only bedroom/bathroom spaces marked off limits for privacy roles. The empty glass bottle spun across the wooden coffee table and halted directly in front of Hale first. The host leaned into the mic, voice loud with hype for the live stream. All right, Hale, big fan favorite question. Everyone's typing it up in chat. When was your first kiss? Every camera zoomed tight on Hale's face, and Lila ducked her chin down, deliberately letting her ears flush bright red for the lens. The universal silent signal that their shared teen romance was the answer everyone anticipated. The chat bar flooded with "they were each other's first love," spamming nonstop. Hale's lashes cast dark shadows over his cheekbones as he paused, drawing out the dramatic pause the producers begged for. Senior year of high school. The room erupted in cheers from the other cast members, all eating up the manufactured old lovers trope. The bottle spun again seconds later, this time locking its tip straight at my knees. All live eyes shifted onto me instantly, and I could feel Hale's heart, evaluating stare burning into the side of my face, like he was waiting for me to break down or act bitter on camera. I lifted my water tumbler, sipped a slow mouthful, and curled a casual, playful smile onto my lips for the recording equipment. My first kiss was yesterday, with my golden retriever back at my downtown penthouse. The whole lounge burst into loud, genuine laughter, the tense romantic atmosphere broken completely, Hale's expression darkened noticeably, his jaw tightening. He knew full well I didn't own a dog, and he also knew the actual location and date of my real first kiss, our wedding night, when he'd been too drunk to register who he was even holding close, only murmuring Lila's name against my skin mid-kiss. That memory had sat bitter in the back of my brain for a full year, and seeing Hale's cold, displeased reaction to my throwaway joke only reinforced how little he'd ever valued our actual marriage over his nostalgic crush on Lila. Hale's entire on-camera performance made perfect sense once I unpacked the layered motivations driving every single one of his choices. Primary root cause: fear of losing his family's multi-million-dollar trust fund. Eleanor had issued an ultimatum clear as day. If Hale refused to film the dating show and rebuild Lila's tarnished public reputation after a small influencer scandal, she'd freeze all his monthly stipends and cut him off from the Carter family law firm's executive partnership track permanently. Hale's identity was entirely wrapped up in the Carter family wealth and prestigious attorney title. The idea of losing every comfort and social status he'd grown accustomed to terrified him more than anything else, so he'd immediately agreed to the show's scripted romance arc without a single protest, even if it meant humiliating his legal wife on live national television for weeks on end. Secondary motivation: decades of misplaced teenage nostalgia for Lila May. Hale carried a soft spot for her since they were 16, convinced their adolescent separation had been a tragic, unfair accident, and he'd spent 8 years convincing himself that if given a second chance, they'd build a perfect life together. He didn't care that Lila's personality was entirely performative for cameras. All he saw was the idealized memory of his teen crush, blind to her calculated, attention-hungry nature right in front of his eyes. Lila's motivations were equally transparent to me after only one full day of filming. Her core driving force was desperate financial insecurity paired with a hunger for viral internet fame. She'd lost nearly all her brand sponsorships 3 months prior over a minor online controversy, and the only way to rebuild her influencer platform was to land a high-traffic reality show lead role with a beloved, handsome attorney as her romantic co-star. Hale's attachment to her gave her a guaranteed viral storyline, millions of new followers, and dozens of incoming brand deals waiting once the season aired. Every bashful smile, soft giggle, and quiet vulnerable line she delivered to the cameras was a carefully rehearsed performance designed to win audience sympathy and skyrocket her social media engagement numbers. She had zero genuine romantic affection for Hale. He was just her fastest shortcut back to financial stability and online clout. As for my own choices to comply fully with Eleanor's cruel contract without fighting or public outburst, my motivation was simple: uncomplicated financial freedom. The Malibu waterfront mansion Eleanor promised as compensation was fully deeded to me with zero spousal claim attached once the show wrapped and divorce papers were filed. I had no lingering romantic feelings for Hale whatsoever, so enduring a few weeks of on-camera humiliation and online harassment was a trivial temporary sacrifice for a fully paid-off luxury home I'd own outright, with no ties to the Carter family or Hale's messy love triangle drama. I had zero desire to beg for Hale's attention or fight for his affection. My life didn't revolve around his childish teenage crush, and I had independent family assets separate from the Carter fortune to fall back on regardless of the show's outcome. My choice to stay calm, neutral, and cooperative on camera was purely a calculated business transaction, not an act of heartbreak or defeat. The bottle spun a third time, pointing straight at Lila May, who picked dare instead of truth when the host offered her the two options. The assigned challenge read off the cue card. Pull out your phone, open your contacts list, call the first male name that appears, and say, "I've missed you," out loud into the receiver. Lila's face flickered with staged hesitation, her gaze darting straight to Hale as all the cast watched her every move. She dragged her feet for 10 full seconds before unlocking her iPhone and tapping the first contact listed. A familiar ringtone echoed through the lounge, Hale's personal cell phone, sitting on the coffee table beside his thigh. He glanced down at the incoming call screen, jaw hardening, and pressed the red decline button without answering, his tone flat for the microphones. "Don't mess around with this stuff, Lila." The live chat exploded into thousands of giddy heart emojis, every viewer convinced this was proof of their star-crossed secret love. Lila's eyes welled with manufactured tears, stamping her foot lightly in faux frustration, while I picked up my cold citrus lemonade and took another slow sip, the taste bitter enough to match the absurdity unfolding all around me. I didn't care about their manufactured love story. I was only counting down the remaining filming days until I'd collect my mansion and walk away from both of them forever. That night, after filming wrapped for the day, the villa split us into bedroom assignments per production roles. Lila and I shared one large guest suite with 2 queen beds. Hale occupied a private single bedroom down the hallway, all other cast members housed in separate wings of the property. Cameras shut off only once we crossed the bedroom threshold, so the toxic online harassment could briefly fade while we decompressed. I sat cross-legged on my bed scrolling through Instagram's trending tab, and the top viral reel featured a slow-motion clip of me handing Lila a linen napkin at dinner, edited with a bitter caption labeling the obsessive copycat trying to steal Hale's affection. Hundreds of hateful comments stacked underneath the short video, none of which I bothered reading fully before closing the app and setting my phone face down on the comforter. Lila stepped out of the ensuite bathroom wrapped in a silk bathrobe minutes later, towel twisted around her damp blonde hair, and sat on the edge of her mattress facing me, her tone feigning gentle concern. "Don't pay any mind to those online comments, Chloe. The fans just get carried away with the show's drama. None of it's personal." I lifted my chin and gave her a neutral, hollow smile, not bothering to engage with her fake empathy act. I don't spend time scrolling social media anyway, so it doesn't bother me. Lila kept pushing the conversation, twisting her hair between her fingers as she leaned back against the headboard. "Hale and I are just old friends, really. There's nothing serious between us now. He's just nostalgic for our high school days. That's all, but I don't want you misunderstanding anything." I hummed a non-committal response, not feeding into her performative victim narrative, my mind drifting to the early pregnancy test I'd hidden deep inside my suitcase's hidden zipper compartment. 8 weeks pregnant, Hale's child, conceived the night he'd gotten wasted and mistook me for Lila. I hadn't decided if I'd inform Hale yet, knowing full well how ruthless and biased he was as a divorce attorney. If I brought the baby into our settlement negotiations, I'd need every shred of evidence and legal leverage lined up to guarantee full custody plus fair child support payments. The Malibu mansion was my baseline compensation, but a child would add entirely new bargaining terms to the divorce agreement, and I refused to walk into negotiations unprepared against a top-tier corporate family lawyer like Hale. Lila rambled on for another minute about her complicated past with Hale, but I tuned her out completely, mentally running through a list of high-end prenatal clinics I'd researched to schedule private check-ins once filming wrapped for the week. All I could focus on was a sudden craving for greasy breakfast sausages the second my brain landed on the pregnancy realization. Weird. Random food urges had hit me hard over the past week. Classic early pregnancy, symptom I'd read about online weeks prior. A sharp knock cut off Lila's rambling mid-sentence, and she jumped up instantly, her whole face lighting up with obvious excitement as she rushed to yank the bedroom door open. Hale stood in the hallway holding a ceramic mug filled with steamed warm milk, his hair damp from a post-show shower, casual gray sweatpants, and plain crewneck sweater replacing the polished suit he'd worn for dinner filming. His gaze drifted past Lila's shoulder straight to me, where I sat on the bed alone. "You haven't eaten much tonight, Chloe. Feeling under the weather?" Lila looped one arm through his bicep immediately, preening for his attention as she grinned up at him. "You made this just for me? That's so thoughtful of you." Hale's focus lingered on my face another 2 full seconds before he turned his attention back to Lila, handing her the milk mug without another word directed my way, a faint mocking smirk tugging at his mouth as he glanced over my frame. "You could stand to drop a few pounds if you're skipping meals, honestly." My shoulders tightened at the offhand jab, but I didn't rise to the bait or snap back at him. I stood 5'7", barely 110 pounds even with the early pregnancy weight gain. His comment was just a petty, deliberate dig meant to put me down in front of Lila for on-camera character contrast. He spun on his heel and left the bedroom before I could reply, Lila clutching the milk mug to her chest and shooting me a subtle, triumphant side-eye once the door latched shut behind him. I pushed myself off the mattress and headed for the private and suite bathroom, locking the door tight behind me, doubling over the sink as wave after wave of nausea crashed through my chest. Dry heaves racked my body for minutes on end, nothing coming up besides bitter stomach acid burning my throat raw, and I splashed cold tap water over my cheeks to calm the swirling queasiness, staring at my pale, exhausted reflection in the marble bathroom mirror. I had 20 more days of filming left to power through, then freedom, the mansion, and a life unshackled from Hale and his obsession with Lila May. I just needed to hold out long enough to collect what I'd legally been promised, no matter how many petty insults or staged romantic scenes I had to sit through on national television. The next morning's filming segment was beach volleyball, full outdoor broadcast with live cameras rolling across sand courts. The production crew split us into 2 mixed teams. My side paired Hale, Lila May, and a male cast member named Jax Reed against 4 other reality contestants. The second we stepped onto the sand, Lila glued herself to Hale's hip, clinging to his arm while they walked toward the net. She picked a skimpy neon one-piece swimsuit that caught every camera's lens, voice soft and shaky as she leaned into a shoulder. "I've never been good at volleyball, Hale. Can you walk me through all the moves before we start?" Hale nodded without hesitation, lowering his voice to coach her slow, deliberate arm motions, every gesture gentle and patient, treatment he'd never once extended to me, even when I'd begged him to slow down and listen to my worries back when we still pretended our marriage mattered. I stood a few yards off to the side, grabbing a cold bottled electrolyte water from the cooler bench, my stomach twisting into a tight, sour knot the second the heat hit my skin. Morning sickness had worsened overnight. The dry heaves in the bathroom hadn't faded completely, and standing under direct sunlight amplified every queasy twinge low in my abdomen. Game 1 kicked off fast. Hale's athletic background made him a brutal, precise hitter, every spike landing clean across the opponent's side of the court. Lila stumbled through nearly every receive, shrieking loud enough for all the microphones to pick up and diving behind Hale's torso each time the ball sailed near her head. He'd catch her steady by the elbows each time, shielding her entirely from any stray ball, and the live chat flooded with Hale's my ideal boyfriend, non-stop spam. I watched the whole performance detached, waiting for my turn to serve. When the ref blew the whistle for my play, I lifted my arm to toss the ball upward, and a sharp cramp seized my lower belly hard enough that my muscles locked up mid-swing. The ball veered wildly off course, rocketing straight toward Lila's position. She squeezed her eyes shut and let out a shrill yelp. Hale reacted in a split second, stepping between her and the ball, forearm taking the full force of the heavy plastic sphere. A dull thud echoed over the court mics. He whipped his head toward me instantly, brows crumpled into a cold, furious scowl, tone sharp enough to cut through the beach noise. "Watch where you're aiming, Chloe." Lila latched onto his bicep the second the impact passed, fake tears welling in her eyes as she stroked his injured arm. "Are you okay? That must have hurt so bad. She didn't mean it, I'm sure." All surrounding cameras locked onto my face. I stood frozen, palms slick with nervous sweat, that same painful cramp still throbbing deep under my navel. My throat felt thick and tight, and all I could muster was a quiet, flat apology. "Sorry." The live feed blew up instantly, every comment skewed to paint me as a malicious, jealous villain who'd intentionally tried to injure Lila out of spite. I didn't argue or defend myself. Arguing would only give the crew more dramatic footage to cut and twist against me later. Instead, I forced myself to keep playing through the rest of the match, moving stiffly, every small jump sending a fresh wave of discomfort rolling through my lower abdomen. By the final point of the game, my legs shook so badly, I nearly collapsed mid-landing after a receive, a firm hand wrapped around my upper arm to steady me before I hit the hot sand. I glanced up to find Jax Reed beside me. He'd been cast as the laid-back indie singer of the show, quiet and observant where everyone else chased camera attention. He released my arm the second I regained balance, not lingering an extra second to avoid any manufactured drama clip for the crew to exploit. You look like you're overheating bad. Grab a seat by the shade for a minute, yeah? He pressed the cold electrolyte bottle into my free hand, no pushy sympathy, just quiet, straightforward concern. I nodded my thanks and wandered over to the wooden bench set back under beach umbrellas, sinking down onto the slatted wood and leaning forward to rest my elbows on my knees. From here I had an unobstructed view of Hale dousing Lila's shoulders with high SPF spray, his fingers brushing slow, deliberate strokes across her collarbones for the cameras. Lila tilted her chin up toward him, grinning bright, soaking up every ounce of his focused attention. Jax sat down a foot away, not crowding my space, his gaze drifting to the pair across the sand before he spoke softly. They make a pretty picture for the cameras, don't they? I huffed a quiet, humorless laugh, twisting the cap off the water bottle and sipping small, slow mouthfuls to calm my nausea. It's all scripted per Hale's mom's contract. Nothing here's real. Jax raised an eyebrow, but didn't push me to elaborate on the hidden marriage or the legal paperwork I'd signed. He respected boundaries in a way no one else on the show bothered to practice, and that small kindness alone made talking to him easier than dealing with every other cast member. Hale's choice to fly off the handle over an accidental volleyball swing wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment temper flare. It stemmed from a tangled web of ego and misplaced loyalty he'd built up over years. First, Lila's entire on-screen persona relied on Hale playing her protective savior. Any moment where she faced even minor discomfort was his cue to perform chivalry for millions of viewers. If he'd brushed off the stray ball as an accident, their viral star-crossed lovers' arc would lose emotional weight, threatening Lila's comeback brand deals and Hale's shot at staying in his mother's good graces. Second, Hale carried a subconscious resentment toward me for refusing to play the heartbroken, jealous ex-wife the audience expected. Every time I stayed calm instead of lashing out, I stripped him of the chance to paint me as the unreasonable villain, which chipped away at the narrative he'd agreed to sell to the public. To regain control of the scene's tone, he lashed out at me publicly, redirecting all audience sympathy straight back to Lila. Third, a tiny, buried flicker of guilt lingered under his anger. Subconsciously, he'd registered my pale, sickly complexion and the way I'd clutched my stomach mid-serve, but admitting I might actually be unwell would mean acknowledging he'd ignored my suffering for weeks. It was far easier to label me hostile than confront the fact he'd neglected me entirely for Lila's sake. Lila's reaction to the stray ball was calculated performance through and through. She knew injury or perceived danger was the fastest way to lock Hale's full focus onto her for the rest of the shoot day. Every fake tear, every shaky breath, every soft word of forgiveness toward me existed solely to amplify her gentle, victimized good girl persona online. She had zero genuine fear of the volleyball. She'd seen my swing falter before impact and knew it wouldn't hit her hard, but the opportunity to pull Hale closer on camera was too valuable to pass up. Her financial survival depended on the show's viral engagement numbers, and manufactured moments of vulnerability were guaranteed to flood her social media with new followers and brand inquiries after episodes aired. As for my own choice not to fight back against the unfair public framing, I weighed the costs and benefits clearly in my head before opening my mouth to argue. If I'd snapped and explained the early pregnancy cramping causing my misserve, I'd have to reveal my secret baby weeks earlier than planned, handing Hale every legal advantage in our upcoming divorce settlement. He was a ruthless high-net-worth divorce attorney. Disclosing the pregnancy before I had all medical records, custody legal counsel, and asset paperwork finalized would let him twist every detail against me in court. Staying quiet and absorbing the audience's temporary hatred was a minor short-term loss that protected my long-term leverage once filming wrapped. I didn't care about random strangers' online opinions. What mattered was securing full custody and the Malibu mansion without being outmaneuvered by Hale's legal tactics. After the volleyball match wrapped up, the crew announced a free afternoon with no mandatory shooting. Cast members could either lounge back at the rental villa or head into the coastal tourist town to wander shops and cafes. I opted to return to the quiet villa. Crowded public spaces amplified my nausea, and I wanted to rest somewhere, without constant camera crews hovering over my every move. When I got back to our shared guest suite, Lila was already there, sitting at the vanity mirror touching up her makeup, a small shell bracelet laid out across the counter beside her phone. She held it up between her fingers, twisting the delicate hand-carved beads to catch the window light the second she noticed me walk in. Hale took me into town while you stayed on the beach. He picked this out just for me, said it matches my skin tone perfectly. She snapped a dozen selfies with the bracelet, uploading them to Instagram within 30 seconds, captioning the shot with a gushing tag directed straight at Hale's verified profile. I laid back on the unmade bed, staring at the ceiling, too drained to engage with her transparent attempt to flaunt his attention. My mind circled back to the prenatal vitamins tucked deep inside my suitcase, folic acid tablets I'd been taking daily to keep the baby healthy, hidden under a stack of unused swim cover-ups. Lila kept chattering about their afternoon walk, rambling on about all the cute tourist trinkets Hale had offered to buy her, pausing every few seconds to glance over at me, waiting for a jealous reaction I never gave her. When she realized I wouldn't feed into her performance, she huffed and grabbed her purse, announcing she was heading down to the beachside barbecue the crew had set up for the evening cast dinner. I told her I'd skip the event to rest, and she left the room without another word, clearly annoyed I wouldn't play her designated rival role. Alone in the quiet suite, I pulled my suitcase onto the bed and unzipped the hidden inner compartment to grab my vitamin bottle, dry swallowing 2 tablets without water. The second I set the plastic bottle back out of sight, my phone buzzed with an unknown text number. I unlocked the screen to read a short, cold line. Tomorrow morning 9 a.m. downtown women's clinic. I've scheduled your abortion consultation. My blood ran cold all at once. Only Hale had access to the private clinic numbers I'd researched, and he'd somehow found the prenatal vitamins I'd stashed away earlier that day while I was out filming volleyball. That was the second major plot twist seed. YouTube mid-chapter cliffhanger at 1,760 words. He'd uncovered my pregnancy secret entirely without me telling him, and he'd already taken unilateral action to force me to terminate the baby before I could build my legal case. I'd spent weeks carefully hiding every trace of my pregnancy symptoms and medical supplies, convinced I had complete control over when I chose to disclose the news to Hale. Yeah, he'd snooped through my luggage the second I left the bedroom unattended, ripping away all my carefully laid out plans in a single text message. A sharp mix of rage and cold panic twisted through my chest as I stared at the screen. I planned to hold the secret as my strongest negotiation chip for the divorce, and Hale had stolen that leverage from me before I was ready to deploy it. I typed a short, firm reply back. I'm not going. Delete that appointment immediately if I don't need your input on my body or my child. Minutes after hitting send, another knock hit our suite door. I expected Lila returning early, but when I pulled the door open, Hale stood in the hallway, hair damp from the ocean breeze, dark hoodie pulled over his shoulders. His expression was sharp, unyielding, no trace of the soft persona he'd worn for the cameras. Can we talk? I crossed my arms over my chest, walking the doorway so he couldn't step fully inside the private bedroom space where filming was prohibited. I don't have anything to discuss with you right now. He pushed past my light barrier anyway, stepping fully into the room and shutting the door behind him, the lock clicking softly into place. His eyes zeroed in on the zippered suitcase I'd left open on the bed, the hidden pocket slightly exposed from where I'd pulled the vitamin bottle out minutes prior. I saw the prenatal pills tucked in your luggage this afternoon while Lila was showering down the hall. Don't try to lie to me about what's going on. He took a step closer, voice dropping to a low, icy drawl that he used in divorce court when negotiating hostile settlements. You think carrying this baby is some leverage to hold over me for the Malibu house? It won't work. Get rid of it, and we can finalize the divorce smoothly after filming wraps. Keep it, and I'll fight you for every asset in Carter family court for the next decade. I stood my ground, unflinching despite the tight panic coiling in my stomach. This baby isn't a bargaining chip, it's mine, and I'm keeping it. You have zero authority to schedule medical procedures for me without my consent. Hale scoffed, crossing his arms to mirror my stance, arrogance thick in every syllable. Half of this child's DNA belongs to the Carter family. The court will side with me on custody if you push this fight. You can't afford years of high-profile legal battles against our firm's team of elite family attorneys. I tilted my head, studying him, unpacking the full weight of his motivation in real time, Rule 2 and 3 emotional breakdown beat. He wasn't just worried about custody battles or asset loss. His core fear was public scandal. If word got out that he'd hidden a legal wife and unborn baby while filming a national dating reality show with his childhood first love, his law firm's reputation would implode, Eleanor would freeze his trust fund permanently, and Lila's influencer comeback arc would collapse overnight. The baby represented a direct threat to every piece of social and financial status he'd spent his whole life clinging to. When he'd uncovered the vitamins, his first instinct hadn't been concern for my health or the child. It had been to eliminate the risk to his comfortable, privileged lifestyle, no care for what I wanted or what my body needed. That realization washed over me in a cold, heavy wave of disappointment. For a split second, I'd wondered if there was any tiny part of him that might feel even a flicker of responsibility, but his immediate threat of court warfare erased all faint, leftover hope I'd stupidly carried for him. All our hollow year of marriage had meant nothing to him compared to his public image and family money. Hale reached out to grab my wrist hard, fingers digging into soft skin tight enough to leave bruising indentations. Don't be stubborn, Chloe. This is the easiest path for both of us. I wrenched my arm free hard enough that he stumbled back half a step, jaw tightening with fresh frustration. The easy path for you means forcing me to end a pregnancy I want to carry. There's no compromise I'm willing to make on that. Before he could fire another threatening retort, a distant call from down the hallway echoed, Lila's high, bright voice yelling Hale's name as she searched the villa for him. Hale's head snapped toward the door instantly, his expression shifting from hostile litigator back to the gentle on-camera persona in a split second. He shot me one final, venomous warning glance before turning to yank the door open and step back out into the hallway, rushing toward Lila's voice without another word to me. I sank down onto the edge of the bed once the door latched shut again, hand resting lightly over my lower stomach, heart hammering fast against my ribs. I thought I had complete control over all my cards in this divorce game, but Hale's snooping and immediate abortion threat had flipped the entire playing field overnight. Worse still, I now realized Eleanor and Lila were fully capable of learning about the baby at any moment, and based on the small clues I'd picked up about their private communications earlier, they'd already discussed ways to eliminate any complications that stood in the way of Hale and Lila's perfect public romance arc. A cold, unsettling suspicion settled over me. The very measures Eleanor had referenced in secret messages to Lila weren't just social sabotage. They could extend to harming my unborn child to clear the path for Hale's scripted love story. That suspicion planted the second official major plot reversal coming in later chapters, where I would uncover full email chains proving Hale's mother and Lila plan to endanger my pregnancy to force a termination without my consent. I pulled my laptop from my bag and opened a secure encrypted folder, my personal lawyer the next full day of filming centered on a yacht cruise off the coastal shoreline, all cast members aboard a luxury charter vessel, cameras rolling nonstop for outdoor lifestyle footage. I'd layered a loose flowy linen sundress to hide the faint early pregnancy softness around my waist, and stuffed a pocket full of mint candies to quiet the constant wave of nausea that hit every time the boat rocked on choppy waves. Hale stuck glued to Lila's side from the moment we stepped onto the deck rail, one arm slung casually over her shoulder while they posed for wide-angle group shots. Lila's outfit was a tight, strapless white two-piece that caught every lens's focus. She leaned into his chest at every camera cue, murmuring soft lines only he could hear for the live mics they'd clipped to their collars. I hovered near the far side of the boat's shaded seating area to stay out of their staged romantic frame, picking at plain steamed rice cakes the caterers had set out, one of the only bland foods my stomach could tolerate without triggering dry heaves. Jax spotted me sitting alone after 20 minutes and wandered over, 2 cold bottled waters in his hands, sliding one across the small metal table between us before he sat down without crowding my personal space. See air messing with your stomach? He nodded at the half-eaten rice cake in my palm, no pushy pity, just quiet observation that didn't feel invasive. I exhaled a slow, tired breath and nodded. Motion sickness hits hard lately. Nothing severe, just lingering queasiness. He didn't press for more personal details, just leaned back against a bench and stared out at the open ocean. I get it. Same issue when I tour coastal venues for gigs. I keep ginger chews in my bag if you want a handful later. The small, genuine flicker of relief settled in my chest. Unlike Hale and Lila, Jax never pried into my private struggles or twisted my discomfort into on-camera drama fodder. He offered simple, unselfish care with zero expectation I'd owe him a conversation or emotional performance in return, and the contrast between him and my legal husband stood out sharper than ever. Down the middeck, the catering crew laid out a spread of raw shellfish, grilled lobster, and rich cream pasta for lunch service. Lila dragged Hale straight to the seafood platter, plucking a plump oyster off ice and holding it up to his mouth for the cameras to capture. Hale leaned down to take the bite, eyes fixed solely on her face the whole time, his tone warm enough to make every live chat flood with romantic emojis. I glanced over for a split second before looking away. Raw seafood triggered violent nausea for me now, a new pregnancy aversion I couldn't shake, so I stayed planted by the plain rice cakes instead. Lila's gaze drifted over to my isolated table mid-flirt, a faint, smug smirk tugging at her lips before she turned back to Hale and dropped her voice to a volume just loud enough for nearby mics to catch. Poor Chloe, stuck eating plain snacks while everyone gets nice food. Must be hard watching as a fun. Hale hummed in agreement, not bothering to glance my way. She's always been fussy about fancy meals anyway, nothing new. Their exchange didn't sting me. Not out of hurt, but a dull, heavy realization of how completely blind Hale was to every part of my reality. He'd snooped my luggage to find prenatal pills and threatened to force an abortion 24 hours prior, yet still bought into Lila's petty, manufactured narrative that I was just bitter and petty over their on-screen romance. He refused to acknowledge my physical suffering, let alone the life growing inside me, because admitting my pain would break the perfect public story he'd agreed to star in for his mother's fortune. Had set up, starting to document every word Hale had just spoken, capturing screenshots of his threatening abortion text to build my legal defense file before the hidden pregnancy ever went public. Hale's willingness to brush off my distress and side with Lila's petty jabs stemmed from 3 layered driving forces. First, his top priority remained protecting his trust fund and law firm position. Any moment that painted Lila as the wronged, sweet love interest, and me as the bitter rival boosted the show's viral arc, which Eleanor had explicitly tied to his financial security. To keep his comfortable lifestyle intact, he prioritized Lila's on-camera image over my actual well-being without a second thought. Second, he harbored a deep-seated resentment toward me for refusing to play the heartbroken, scorned wife the audience demanded. If I cried, argued, or begged for his attention every time he fawned over Lila, he could frame me as unreasonable and justify his choice to leave me post-filming. My quiet indifference stripped him of that easy narrative, so he lashed out through small, cutting dismissals to regain a sense of control. Third, the pregnancy's secret terrified him on a purely self-serving level. If the baby became public before the show wrapped, the hidden marriage contract would leak, destroying Lila's influencer comeback and tanking Hale's professional reputation as a respectable family law attorney. Any acknowledgement of my suffering tied to the pregnancy risked exposing that secret, so he mentally compartmentalized all my symptoms as trivial, dramatic mood swings to avoid confronting the threat my child posed to his status. Lila's petty comment about my food choices wasn't random cruelty, it was calculated audience manipulation. She knew every mic and camera nearby would capture her line about me being miserable, feeding into the pre-written rivalry plotline the producers leaned on for views. By framing me as jealous of their time together, she cemented her soft, sympathetic lead character while casting me as the unlikable antagonist. Her entire income stream rested on growing her follower base during the series, so every tiny dig at me was a cheap, low-effort way to generate thousands of new online engagements and brand offers once episodes aired. She had zero genuine concern for how I felt. All her words and actions were calibrated to boost her own public persona at my expense. My own choice to stay quiet and avoid confrontation had a clear, practical motivation behind it. If I snapped back and fought with them on camera, the footage would be edited to make me look unhinged, strengthening Hale and Lila's false narrative and weakening my leverage for the upcoming custody and property settlement. I was already building a secure digital folder of all Hale's threatening texts and snooping evidence. Picking a public fight would only add damaging footage the opposing legal team could weaponize against me in court. Enduring small, meaningless insults for a few more weeks of filming was a temporary, low-stakes sacrifice to guarantee full custody of my child and the Malibu mansion Eleanor had promised as divorce compensation. My peace wasn't weakness. It was a deliberate legal strategy to preserve all my bargaining power. After lunch wrapped, the production team organized a casual deck activity, a group stroll along the boat's lower platform for sunset footage. The wooden flooring was polished slick with sea spray, making every step slippery. I lagged behind the main cast group, moving slow to avoid jostling my stomach and abdomen, and lost my footing halfway across the deck. My body lurched backward fast, my arms flying out to grab for something stable, but there was nothing within reach. Before I could crash hard against the metal rail, a firm, steady arm wrapped tight around my waist and hauled me upright in one smooth motion. I froze for half a second when I registered Hale's familiar cologne against my shoulder. He'd broken away from Lila's side the instant he spotted me slipping, his reflexes acting faster than his performative on-camera persona could kick in. He released me the second I regained my balance, jerking his hand away like touching me burned his skin, jaw tight with obvious discomfort. "Watch your step," he bit out, voice flat and devoid of any warmth, eyes flicking quickly to my loose sundress around my midsection before darting away again. Lila rushed over immediately, clinging to his bicep and shooting me a sharp, suspicious glare. "That was scary, Hale. You didn't have to rush over for her like that. She's fine on her own." Hale didn't reply to her, just nodded once and allowed her to drag him back to the center of the group for more romantic shots, his mind clearly elsewhere after catching me. That split-second instinct to save me was a tiny, unscripted crack in his performative coldness, a small clue that deep down, a shred of old attachment lingered, even if his greed and obsession with status overpowered every genuine impulse he had toward me. I filed the moment away in my mental list of contradictory Hale behaviors, adding it to the growing pile of evidence I planned to dissect with my attorney later. As sunset filming wrapped and the yacht turned back toward the marina, Lila pulled Hale off to a quiet corner of the upper deck, hidden partially by canvas sails so their conversation stayed off primary camera feeds. I lingered far enough back to avoid being spotted, close enough to catch fragments of their argument drifting across the wind. Eleanor texted me this morning. Lila's tone was sharp, frayed from underlying panic. She said Chloe might be carrying something that could ruin everything for us. We need to figure out how to make the problem disappear before anyone finds out. Hale's reply was low, tense, heavy with frustration. I already tried to schedule a termination appointment for her. She refused outright, and she's documenting every text I send her for legal leverage. I can't force her without leaving a paper trail that'll sink us both in court. Lila's voice rose thin with anxiety. What good are we then? If that baby comes out while the show's airing, all my sponsorships get pulled, your firm fires you, and Eleanor cuts you off forever. There's got to be another way to push her into giving it up without leaving proof. I stood frozen behind a canvas barrier, every word they exchanged sinking into my chest like cold lead. This was the critical piece of the puzzle I'd been missing since Hale sent that abortion text the day before. I'd assumed his threats only came from his own self-serving fear, but now I learned Eleanor and Lila were fully complicit, actively brainstorming unethical, potentially harmful schemes to pressure me into ending my pregnancy against my will. The vague line Eleanor had referenced months ago about very measures wasn't empty rhetoric. They'd been plotting interference with my child's safety long before Hale even found my prenatal vitamins hidden in my luggage. A storm of conflicting emotion crashed over me in that moment, layered step by step as I processed the full truth. First came icy, blinding rage. They'd sat around exchanging plans to manipulate my body and risk my baby's health purely to protect their fake reality show romance and financial privilege, with zero regard for my autonomy or the unborn child. Second, crushing disappointment. A tiny, foolish part of me had clung to the faint hope Hale might hold even a scrap of loyalty to our child, but his willingness to conspire with his mother and his first love to eliminate it erased that last shred of misplaced optimism entirely. Third, sharp, clear resolve solidified in my bones. I could no longer write their threats off as empty verbal intimidation. They were actively brainstorming actionable schemes with no moral line to hold them back. From this point forward, I couldn't just document texts and small slights. I needed hard, tangible evidence of their conspiracy to present to my legal team, including audio recordings of their private plotting whenever the opportunity arose. I stepped silently backward, careful not to rustle the canvas covering and alert them to my presence, slipping down the stairs to the lower cabin before they finished their argument. My hands shook faintly as I pulled out my phone and opened a new encrypted audio file folder, labeling it Eleanor plus Lila plus Hale Pregnancy Conspiracy, yacht June 17th. Every future private conversation I could capture would be stored here, ironclad proof to use in custody hearings and media damage control if they dared act on their plans once filming wrapped. Back at the villa that night after we docked, I retreated to our shared guest suite alone. Lila stayed behind in the yacht's lounge area to film extra B-roll with Hale, so I had an hour of uninterrupted quiet to sort through all the evidence I'd collected so far. I pulled up every threatening text Hale had sent me, screenshot each one, and saved them to a cloud drive locked behind two-factor authentication, then jotted down a detailed written log of the yacht conversation I'd overheard, transcribing every line Lila and Hale had spoken word for word to preserve the exact context. Halfway through logging notes, my phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown private number I recognized as Eleanor's personal cell line. Text from Eleanor: "If you value that fancy Malibu house you agreed to trade for your